The moment Naomi remembered most was not the divorce papers themselves. It was the sound of her mother's gasp. That sharp intake of breath that cut through the laughter and chatter of 30 guests gathered in her living room, all there to celebrate the coming of her first child. The baby shower had been perfect until that second. Pink and white balloons clustered in corners, a table laden with gifts wrapped in pastel paper, finger sandwiches arranged on her grandmother's good china. Her sister had spent hours making a diaper cake that stood 3 tiers high. Everything was exactly as Naomi had imagined during the long nights when she couldn't sleep, when the baby kicked and turned inside her 7-month belly, when she'd felt happier than she'd ever been in her 32 years of life. She had been sitting in the chair of honor, the one decorated with ribbons and a sash that read "Mommy to be," when Trevor walked up to her. Her husband of 5 years. The man she'd loved since college. The father of her unborn child. He wasn't smiling. That should have been her first clue, but she'd been too caught up in the joy of the moment, too focused on the gift she'd just unwrapped from her best friend Simone, a beautiful hand-knitted blanket in the softest yellow yarn. "Naomi, I need to give you something," Trevor had said. His voice was flat. "That." She looked up at him, confused by his tone, and saw he was holding a large manila envelope. The room hadn't gone quiet yet. People were still talking, laughing, admiring the gifts as she opened them. Her aunt was in the kitchen, probably checking on the cake. "What's this?" she asked, taking the envelope. It was heavy. Official looking. Her hands, small and delicate with nails painted a soft rose color for the occasion, trembled slightly as she began to open it. Something in Trevor's expression made her stomach drop. He looked like a stranger. Cold, distant, almost cruel. She pulled out the papers inside. The first thing she saw was the header, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." The words swam before her eyes. She blinked, certain she was reading it wrong. But no, there it was again. Divorce papers. Her husband had just handed her divorce papers. At her baby shower. While she was 7 months pregnant with his child. That was when her mother gasped. The sound was like a signal. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Everyone in the room seemed to realize something terrible was happening. Naomi looked up from the papers, her dark brown eyes wide with shock, and met Trevor's gaze. He stood there, tall and rigid in his expensive suit, the one she'd helped him pick out last month, and his face showed nothing. No regret. No shame. Nothing. "Trevor, what is this?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She hated that. Hated that in this moment of ultimate betrayal, she sounded weak. "It's exactly what it looks like," he said. His voice carried across the now silent room. "I want a divorce, Naomi. I'm done with this marriage." She heard someone drop a plate. The crash of china breaking seemed impossibly loud. Her sister rushed to her side, reaching for the papers, but Naomi held on to them, her fingers gripping the edges so hard they wrinkled. "You're doing this now?" Her best friend Simone stood up from the couch, her voice sharp with anger. "At her baby shower? Are you out of your mind?" Trevor didn't even look at Simone. His eyes stayed fixed on Naomi, and she saw something in them that made her blood run cold. He wanted her to break down. He wanted her to cry, to beg, to make a scene. This was planned. This was deliberate. He'd chosen this moment specifically to hurt her as much as possible. "I don't love you anymore," he said, and each word was like a slap. "I haven't for a long time. I'm in love with someone else." The room erupted. Her mother was crying. Her sister was shouting at Trevor. Her aunt came running from the kitchen. But Naomi sat frozen in her chair of honor, her hand instinctively moving to her round belly where the baby was turning, disturbed by the stress flooding her system. She felt dizzy. Sick. The room seemed to tilt. "Who?" she whispered. But even as she asked, she knew. Somewhere deep in her gut, she knew. Trevor stepped aside, and Naomi's eyes followed the movement. Standing near the doorway, half hidden behind a cluster of balloons, was a woman. Bethany. She worked at Trevor's company in the marketing department. Naomi had met her at company parties. She was younger, maybe 26, with long blonde hair and the kind of body that came from a personal trainer and strict diet. She'd always been friendly to Naomi, complimenting her clothes, asking about the baby. Now Bethany stepped forward and she was smiling. Actually smiling. There was triumph in that smile, a kind of sick satisfaction that made Naomi's hands curl into fists. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," Bethany said, but she didn't sound sorry at all. "But Trevor and I are in love. We've been together for over a year now. We didn't want to hurt you, but we can't deny our feelings anymore." Over a year. The words echoed in Naomi's head. Over a year meant this had started before she was even pregnant. This had been going on through anniversary dinners and weekend trips and late nights when she trusted Trevor was working late at the office. All of it had been a lie. Get out. Her sister's voice was low and dangerous. Both of you get out of this house right now. Actually, Trevor said, pulling another paper from his jacket pocket, the house is half mine. I have every right to be here. But I'll be leaving soon enough. I'm moving in with Bethany. My lawyer will be in touch about dividing assets. You piece of... Simone started forward, but Naomi's mother caught her arm. Naomi still hadn't moved. She sat in her decorated chair, divorce papers in her lap, her baby kicking inside her, and she felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't tears. It wasn't even sadness. It was something colder. Harder. It was rage crystallizing into something sharp and purposeful. Sign the papers, Trevor said, looking down at her. Don't make this difficult. You'll get a fair settlement. Child support. All of that. Just sign the papers and we can both move on with our lives. He reached down to touch her shoulder, but she jerked away from his hand like it was poison. For the first time since he'd handed her the envelope, Naomi stood up. At 5'6", she was much shorter than Trevor's 6'2", but she lifted her chin and looked him straight in the eye. Get my house, she said, and her voice was steady now, cold as ice. Naomi, be reasonable. Get out, she screamed, and the force of it seemed to shake the walls. The baby kicked hard as if agreeing with her. Get out, or I swear I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing and harassment. Get out now. Trevor's jaw tightened. He glanced at Bethany, who suddenly looked less confident, less triumphant. The room full of Naomi's family and friends stared at them with such hatred that even Trevor seemed to realize he'd miscalculated something. Fine, he said. But those papers need to be signed within 30 days. My lawyer will be in contact. He walked toward the door, Bethany scurrying after him like a puppy. Just before he left, he turned back one more time. I'm sorry it had to be this way, he said, but there was no apology in his voice. Only satisfaction. He'd wanted to humiliate her, and he thought he'd succeeded. The door closed behind them. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Naomi's mother was there, wrapping her arms around her daughter, and Simone was on her other side, and her sister was rubbing her back, and everyone was talking at once, crying, angry, supportive. But Naomi barely heard any of it. She looked down at the divorce papers in her hand, at Trevor's signature already there at the bottom, and she felt that cold rage settle deeper into her bones. He thought he'd broken her. He thought he'd won. He thought she would sign these papers like a good little wife and let him walk away to his new life with his mistress. He had no idea what was coming. Because Trevor had made one crucial mistake. In his arrogance, in his need to hurt her as publicly and painfully as possible, he'd forgotten something important. Naomi wasn't just his wife. She was also his business partner. They'd built their consulting firm together from nothing. She knew every account, every client, every number. She had access to everything. And in the 3 months since she'd first suspected something was wrong, since she'd noticed the late nights and the secret phone calls and the smell of perfume that wasn't hers, she'd been preparing. She'd been watching, documenting, planning. Because Naomi had learned something important from her grandmother, who'd raised 4 children alone after her husband left. Never let anyone see you coming. I'm okay, she said suddenly, pulling back from her mother's embrace. Everyone looked at her with concern, with pity, and she hated that look. She would never be pitied again. I'm okay. I promise. Honey, you don't have to be strong right now, her mother said, tears streaming down her face. That man what he did was unforgivable. Inhuman. I know, Naomi said. She looked around at all the concerned faces, at the ruined party, at the gifts still waiting to be opened, at the cake that would never be cut. I know exactly what he did. And I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. Something in her voice made everyone go quiet. Simone studied her face and slowly, a smile began to spread across her best friend's features. You have a plan, Simone said. It wasn't a question. Naomi smiled back, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd been pushed too far, who'd been humiliated for the last time, who was done being the victim. Oh yes, she said softly, her hand resting on her belly, on the child she would raise alone, on the future she would build without Trevor. I have a plan. And it starts tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., when my lawyer files papers that are going to make those divorce papers look like a love letter. Her mother looked confused, but Simone laughed, a sound of pure delight and vindication. What did you do? Her sister asked. Naomi looked down at the divorce papers again, at Trevor's signature, at his lawyer's name printed at the top. She thought about everything she'd discovered in the past 3 months. Everything she'd documented. Every receipt, every text message, every hotel charge. Every single piece of evidence that showed exactly what Trevor had been doing with their money, their business, their life. "What did I do?" she repeated. "I did what any smart woman would do when she discovers her husband is cheating. I protected myself. I protected my baby. And I made sure that when he tried to destroy me, I'd be ready to destroy him right back." She looked up at her family, at the people who truly loved her, and her smile grew wider. "Tomorrow," she said, "Trevor is going to realize that handing me divorce papers at my baby shower was the biggest mistake of his life. Because I'm not the one who's going to lose everything in this divorce. He is." Naomi didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, her hand on her belly where Kennedy, because she'd already decided on the name no matter what Trevor wanted, moved and shifted in restless sleep. The baby sensed her stress. Naomi tried to breathe deeply, tried to calm down for the sake of her daughter, but her mind was racing too fast. At 6 in the morning she gave up on sleep. She showered, dried her natural hair and pulled it back into a neat bun, and dressed in a navy maternity suit that made her look professional and put together. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 24 hours ago she'd been a happy, expectant mother. Now she was a warrior preparing for battle. Her phone buzzed at 7:30. It was her lawyer, Patricia Henderson, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built a reputation destroying cheating husbands in court. "Are you ready?" Patricia asked. "I've been ready for 3 months," Naomi replied. "Good. I'll meet you at the house at 8:45. Your family should be there too. We want witnesses for this." At 8:30 her mother, sister, and Simone arrived. They'd helped clean up the disaster of yesterday's baby shower, boxing up gifts and throwing away uneaten food, their faces grim and angry. Now they sat in her living room waiting. "What exactly is happening?" her mother asked nervously. "Honey, I'm worried about your blood pressure. The stress is temporary," Naomi finished. "After today I can relax. I promise." The doorbell rang at 8:45 exactly. Patricia Henderson entered, carrying a thick briefcase and wearing a smile that reminded Naomi of a shark. Behind her was another person, a tall man with graying hair whom Patricia introduced as Roger Chin, a forensic accountant. "Wait, I thought you said no Chin names?" Naomi's brain hiccuped, but Patricia was already talking. "Everything is ready," Patricia said. "Trevor should be here in about 15 minutes. He thinks he's coming to discuss the divorce terms. He has no idea what's waiting for him." "What is waiting for him?" Simone asked, leaning forward with undisguised interest. Naomi smiled. "The truth." At 9 o'clock exactly, there was a knock on the door. Naomi opened it to find Trevor standing there, looking smug and relaxed. He dressed casually, jeans and a polo shirt, like this was just another easy conversation. Bethany stood next to him, her arm linked through his. "You didn't need to bring her," Naomi said coldly. "Bethany is part of my life now," Trevor said. "She goes where I go. Are you going to let us in or not?" Naomi stepped aside. Trevor and Bethany walked in, then stopped dead when they saw the room full of people. Patricia in her power suit. Roger with his briefcase. Naomi's family arranged on the couch like a jury. "What is this?" Trevor demanded. "I thought we were going to talk privately." "No," Naomi said, settling into her chair. "You don't get privacy. You made our separation public yesterday. So this will be public too." Trevor's eyes narrowed. "If you're trying to intimidate me with lawyers?" "Sit down," Patricia interrupted, her voice sharp as a knife. "Both of you. Sit down and listen." Something in her tone made them obey. They sat on the love seat across from Naomi, suddenly looking less confident. 3 months ago, Naomi began, her voice steady and calm, "I started noticing changes in you, Trevor. You were distant. You were always on your phone. You smelled like perfume. You were working late constantly." She paused. "So I did what any smart woman would do. I started paying attention." Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "If you've known for 3 months, why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to be sure," Naomi said. "And I wanted to be prepared. So I hired a private investigator." She nodded to Patricia, who opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "For 3 months, Trevor, you've been followed. Photographed. Recorded. Every hotel room. Every restaurant. Every moment you spent with Bethany, thinking you were being so clever and secret." Bethany's face went pale. Trevor sat forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You had me followed? That's illegal." Actually, it's not, Patricia said smoothly. Not when you have reasonable suspicion of infidelity. Everything we gathered is completely admissible in court. And there's a lot of it. Hotels in 3 different cities. Company credit card charges for jewelry that Naomi never received. Weekend trips that were supposedly for business conferences. There's even video of the 2 of you at a jewelry store, picking out what I assume is meant to be an engagement ring. Bethany made a small sound of distress. Trevor's jaw was clenched so tight Naomi could see the muscle jumping. But that's not even the best part, Naomi continued. She was enjoying this, she realized. Enjoying watching Trevor squirm. The best part is what Roger found when I asked him to audit our business accounts. Roger stood up, opening his own folder. Mr. Mitchell, over the past 18 months, you've diverted approximately $350,000 from your joint business accounts into a private account that only you control. You've been using company funds to support your affair. Hotels, gifts, trips, and a down payment on a condo in Bethany's name. That's embezzlement, Mr. Mitchell. That's fraud. The room was completely silent. Trevor's face had gone from angry to white. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. That's not, you can't prove. We can prove all of it, Patricia said. Bank records, credit card statements, property records. It's all documented. You've been stealing from your own business to fund your affair, which means you've been stealing from your wife, your business partner. Wait, Bethany said suddenly, her voice high and panicked. Trevor, you told me you had private money. You said you'd been saving. You said the condo was from your investments. Shut up, Bethany, Trevor snapped. But Bethany was looking at him with dawning horror. You told me you were rich. You said when you left her you'd have millions. You said. I said shut up. Trevor shouted. Naomi felt a cold satisfaction watching them turn on each other. But she wasn't done yet. There's more, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. 3 months ago when I first confirmed the affair, I did something else. I called our business partners. I called our biggest clients. I told them I was concerned about some financial irregularities and wanted to make sure everything was in order. I suggested, very gently, that maybe we should restructure the company to protect everyone's interests. Trevor went even whiter if that was possible. No. No, you didn't. I did, Naomi said. And they agreed with me. So 2 months ago the business was quietly restructured. I now own 65% of the company, Trevor. Our partners own 30%. You own 5%. Just enough to keep you legally bound to the company so you can't walk away clean. That's impossible. Trevor jumped to his feet. I would have had to sign papers. You did sign papers, Naomi said calmly. Remember that stack of documents you signed 3 weeks ago? The ones I told you were just routine business filings? You didn't even read them, did you? You just signed where I put the sticky tabs and went back to texting Bethany. The look on Trevor's face was everything Naomi had hoped for. Horror. Disbelief. The realization that he'd been completely outmaneuvered. You can't do this, he whispered. You can't. I already did, Naomi said. She stood up, her hand resting on her belly. And here's what's going to happen now. You're going to be removed from the company for financial misconduct. You'll be lucky if we don't press criminal charges. You're going to lose this divorce badly. I get the house, the car, full custody of our daughter, and child support based on what you should have been earning if you hadn't been fired. You'll pay back every penny you stole, plus damages. And your reputation in this industry? It's over. Because I've already let it slip to certain people what you did. Word travels fast. Trevor was shaking. With rage or fear, Naomi couldn't tell and didn't care. As for you, she said, turning to Bethany, I suggest you get a good lawyer. Because that condo you thought was a gift? It was purchased with stolen company funds. You might be facing charges as an accessory. At minimum, you'll lose the condo. Bethany burst into tears. I didn't know. Trevor, you said you promised? Oh, I almost forgot, Naomi said, reaching for one more envelope. I also had my lawyer draw up a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of me or my home. If you violate it, you'll be arrested. Security will escort you out now. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Trevor and Bethany had no choice but to stand up and walk out, Bethany crying, Trevor stunned into silence. At the door, Trevor turned back one last time. I can't believe you did this. Really? Naomi said. Because I can. You handed me divorce papers at my baby shower, Trevor. In front of everyone I love. You tried to humiliate me in the worst way possible. Did you really think I would just roll over and let you win? I loved you once, he said, and he actually sounded hurt. No, Naomi said. You never loved me. You loved what I could do for you. You loved having a wife who built your business and ran your home and made you look good. But the moment you thought you found something better, you threw me away like garbage. Well, guess what? I'm not garbage, Trevor. I'm the best thing that ever happened to you, and you were too stupid to see it. Now get out of my house. The guards escorted them out. The door closed. And Naomi stood there, her heart pounding, her baby kicking, and she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Free. Her mother rushed to hug her. Oh baby, are you okay? I'm perfect, Naomi said, and she realized it was true. She was exhausted, yes. Heartbroken, yes. But she was also victorious. She'd won. She'd beaten Trevor at his own game. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, Simone said, laughing with delight. Did you see his face? Did you see it? I did, Naomi said, smiling. I absolutely did. Patricia gathered her papers. Well, Mrs. Mitchell, I'd say that went perfectly. He'll try to fight this, of course. But he has no leg to stand on. Everything we did was legal and documented. He's going to lose, and he's going to lose big. Good, Naomi said simply. After everyone left, Naomi sat alone in her living room. Her phone was already buzzing with texts and calls, words spreading about what had happened. She ignored them all. Instead, she put her hand on her belly and spoke to her daughter. It's okay now, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. I promise you, Kennedy, you're going to grow up watching your mother stand strong. You're going to know that you never let anyone disrespect you. You fight back. You plan. You win. The baby kicked as if in agreement. Naomi smiled. This was just the beginning. Trevor's life was about to fall apart completely, and hers? Hers was about to begin for real. The news spread faster than Naomi had anticipated. By Monday morning, less than 48 hours after the confrontation, her phone was flooded with messages. Some were from concerned friends and family. Others were from business contacts who'd heard rumors and wanted to know the truth. And a few, satisfyingly, were from reporters who'd gotten wind of the scandal. She sat at her kitchen table, sipping decaf coffee, her one sacrifice to pregnancy she actually minded, and scrolling through the messages. Her sister had sent a link to a local business blog. The headline read, Power Couple's Shocking Split, Fraud Allegations Rock Consulting Firm. They're calling us a power couple, Naomi muttered to herself. We were never a power couple. I was the power. He was just along for the ride. Her phone rang. Patricia. Good morning, the lawyer said cheerfully. Have you seen the news? Some of it. How bad is it for him? Catastrophic. Trevor's lawyer called me 3 times yesterday. He's panicking. Trevor wants to negotiate. Absolutely not, Naomi said immediately. No negotiations. We proceed exactly as planned. Music to my ears, Patricia replied. Also, I got a very interesting call from Bethany's lawyer. Apparently, she's claiming she had no knowledge that Trevor was married when their affair began. Naomi nearly choked on her coffee. That's a lie. She came to our house for a company barbecue last summer. She met me. She complimented my dress. I know. I have photos from that barbecue. Time-stamped. With both of them in the frame. Her lawyer backed down pretty quickly when I mentioned that. Apparently, she's also claiming emotional distress and considering suing Trevor for fraud. For fraud. Naomi couldn't help but laugh. The mistress is suing my husband for fraud. You can't make this up. They're turning on each other beautifully, Patricia said with satisfaction. Everything is going exactly as predicted. Cheaters always do this. The moment the fantasy falls apart, they start pointing fingers. After hanging up with Patricia, Naomi forced herself to get dressed and go to the office. She'd taken yesterday off to recover, but she couldn't hide forever. The business needed her, especially now. When she walked into the building, the receptionist's eyes went wide. Ms. Mitchell. We didn't expect you today. Are you okay? We heard. I'm fine, Naomi said firmly. Is the team here? In the conference room. They're waiting for you. Naomi walked down the familiar hallway, her heels clicking on the polished floor. She could feel people watching her from their desks, whispers following in her wake. She held her head high. Let them stare. She had nothing to be ashamed of. In the conference room, her business partners stood when she entered. There were 3 of them. Harold, an older man who'd been in consulting for 30 years, Jennifer, a sharp strategist in her 40s, and Antoine, a numbers genius about Naomi's age. Naomi, Harold said gently, we are so sorry about what happened. What Trevor did was inexcusable, Jennifer finished. An illegal. We want you to know we're behind you 100%. Thank you, Naomi said, settling into her chair. I appreciate that. Now let's talk about damage control. For the next 2 hours they discussed strategy. How to handle client concerns. How to restructure Trevor's accounts so they were covered by other team members. How to spin the situation in the press, not to hide what happened, but to show that the company was stable and ethical. We need to make a statement, Antoine said. Something that makes it clear Trevor's actions don't reflect the company's values. Agreed, Naomi said. I'll draft something and run it by legal before we release it. Also, Jennifer added carefully, we need to discuss whether to pursue criminal charges against Trevor. The embezzlement is clear. We have all the documentation. Naomi was quiet for a moment. Criminal charges would mean police, possibly jail time for Trevor. It would be the ultimate revenge. But it would also mean a long drawn-out legal battle. Stress. Media attention. All while she was trying to have a baby and rebuild her life. Let's keep it as leverage, she decided. We'll let Trevor know that we could press charges. It'll keep him cooperative. If he tries to fight the divorce terms or makes trouble, then we go to the police. The others nodded, understanding the strategy. The meeting broke up around lunchtime. Naomi was gathering her things when Jennifer approached her privately. Can I ask you something personal? Jennifer said. Of course. How did you do it? How did you keep functioning, keep planning when you found out he was cheating? Most people would fall apart. Naomi considered the question. I think, she said slowly, it was because I was so angry. I was hurt, yes. Devastated. But mostly I was furious. And I knew if I fell apart he'd win. He'd get to leave me broken and take everything he wanted. I couldn't let that happen. The anger kept me focused. Jennifer nodded. You're the strongest person I know. No, Naomi said. I'm just a woman who refused to be a victim. There's a difference. That evening, alone in her house, Naomi finally let herself process everything. She sat in the nursery she'd been preparing, surrounded by boxes of baby clothes and furniture still waiting to be assembled. She'd planned to do this with Trevor. They were supposed to paint the walls together, argue happily about where to put the crib, dream about their daughter's future. Instead, she was alone. The tears came then hot and bitter. She let herself cry for the marriage she'd thought she had. For the future she'd imagined. For the betrayal and the humiliation and the sheer cruelty of what Trevor had done. But even as she cried, she knew something important. This pain was temporary. What she'd built, her business, her financial security, her legal victory, that was permanent. Trevor had tried to destroy her and had destroyed himself instead. Her phone buzzed. A text from Simone, dinner tomorrow? I made you something. Naomi smiled through her tears. She had people who loved her. Real love, not the fake, conditional love Trevor had offered. She had her family, her friends, her career, and soon she'd have her daughter. That was more than enough. She texted back, yes. Thank you. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Naomi, please. We need to talk. I made a mistake. Can we meet? It was Trevor. She stared at the message for a long moment. 3 days ago she might have responded. Might have felt a flutter of hope that he'd realized what he'd lost. But now she just felt tired and faintly disgusted. She blocked the number without responding. There was nothing left to say. He'd made his choices. She'd made hers. And her choices, unlike his, were going to lead to happiness. She put her phone away and looked around the nursery again. Tomorrow she'd ask her brother to come help her assemble the crib. This weekend her sister would help her paint. The room would be ready for Kennedy, and it would be even better than if Trevor had been involved, because it would be filled with people who actually cared about them. Naomi stood up, wiping away the last of her tears. She had too much to do to waste time crying over someone who didn't deserve her tears. Trevor's life was falling apart. Bethany was turning on him. His career was over. His reputation was ruined. His money was gone. And Naomi? She was just getting started. 2 weeks after the baby shower disaster, Naomi sat in Patricia's office reviewing the mountain of paperwork that would seal Trevor's fate. Her belly had gotten bigger, Kennedy growing stronger inside her, and sometimes Naomi felt like she was in a race against time. She wanted everything settled before the baby came. She wanted to give birth in peace, knowing her future was secure. He's still trying to negotiate, Patricia said, sliding another folder across her desk. His lawyer sent this over yesterday. He wants to keep the car and the boat. He wants split custody. He wants to pay less child support. He wants. Let me guess, Naomi said, not even bothering to open the folder. He's not offering anything in return? Not a single thing. He still thinks he has leverage. Patricia leaned back in her chair. He doesn't seem to understand that we have him completely cornered. Then let's make it clearer, Naomi said. What else do we have? Patricia smiled, that shark smile that Naomi had come to appreciate. Roger finished his complete audit. It's worse than we thought. The embezzlement goes back 2 years, not 18 months. The total is closer to $500,000. Naomi felt her blood pressure spike. $500,000. Their business had been profitable, but not so profitable that $500,000 didn't hurt. That was money that should have gone to expansion, to hiring new staff, to building their future. Instead, Trevor had spent it on hotel rooms and jewelry and a condo for his mistress. How did I not notice? She asked, more to herself than Patricia. Because he's your husband. You trusted him. That's what spouses do. He exploited that trust. Patricia pulled out another document. But here's where it gets interesting. I had Roger trace where all that money went. Hotels, yes. Jewelry, yes. But also some very interesting investments. What kind of investments? Trevor opened an account in the Cayman Islands. He's been moving money there for the past year. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but it adds up to about $70,000. Naomi sat back, stunned. He was hiding money offshore. He was planning this. For at least a year, Patricia confirmed. He was setting up his escape before he even asked for the divorce. This wasn't an impulsive decision, Naomi. This was calculated. He was going to leave you with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with Bethany and all the money he'd stolen. The cold rage that had become Naomi's constant companion intensified. She'd known Trevor was a cheater. She'd known he was a liar. But this level of betrayal, this level of planning to destroy her financially while she was pregnant with his child, was beyond anything she'd imagined. Can we get that money back? She asked. We can try. International accounts are tricky, but Roger has contacts. More importantly, we can use this as leverage. Trevor is trying to act like the victim, like you're being unreasonable. When we show the judge that he was hiding money offshore, planning to defraud you, it's going to destroy any credibility he has left. Do it, Naomi said without hesitation. I want everything. The house, the car, the boat, full custody, maximum child support, and every penny of that offshore money. I want him to walk away with nothing but his clothes and the knowledge that he destroyed his own life. Patricia nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking like a winner. I'll prepare the papers. We'll file them next week. She paused. There's one more thing. Bethany's lawyer reached out again. She wants to meet with you. Absolutely not. I told her that. But she's persistent. She claims she has information that would be useful to you. Information about Trevor that you don't know. Naomi laughed bitterly. What could she possibly tell me that I don't already know? That he's a liar? That he's a cheat? That he's selfish and cruel? I lived with him for 5 years. I know exactly who he is. That's what I figured. But I wanted to let you know. The offer is there if you change your mind. I won't, Naomi said firmly. I don't want anything to do with that woman ever again. She knew he was married. She knew I was pregnant. She stood in my house and smiled at me while she was sleeping with my husband. She deserves whatever happens to her. After the meeting with Patricia, Naomi drove to the office. She'd been going in every day now, partly because there was so much work to do, and partly because staying busy kept her from thinking too much about her shattered personal life. Jennifer met her at the door. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Trevor showed up this morning. Security stopped him at the door, but he's demanding to speak to someone. He says he still works here and we can't bar him from the building. Naomi's jaw clenched. He doesn't work here anymore. He was formally removed from the company last week. I know that. You know that. Apparently, Trevor doesn't accept that reality. They walked to the lobby together. Through the glass doors, Naomi could see Trevor arguing with the security guard. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, his clothes were wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. Good. She pushed through the doors. Trevor, you need to leave. He spun around. Naomi. Thank God. These idiots won't let me in. Tell them it's okay. I work here. No, she said calmly. You don't. You were removed from the company for embezzlement. You received formal notification last week. You're no longer an employee and you're not allowed on the premises. That's insane. You can't just kick me out of my own company. It's not your company. It's my company. And Harold's and Jennifer's and Antoine's. You own 5%, Trevor. That's it. And even that will be gone once we finish the lawsuit against you for financial fraud. People were gathering now, employees coming to watch the scene. Naomi hated the spectacle, but she wasn't going to back down. This is because of the divorce, Trevor said, his voice getting louder. You're punishing me because I fell in love with someone else. That's petty and vindictive. No, Naomi said, her voice cutting through his bluster. This is because you stole $500,000 from our business to fund your affair. This is because you committed fraud. This is because you're a criminal, Trevor. The divorce is just an added bonus. His face went red. I made this company. Me. I brought in the clients. I built the relationships. You brought in clients using my strategies. You built relationships at events I planned. You took credit for work I did. And you stole the money we all earned together. You're not a builder, Trevor. You're a parasite. You can't talk to me like that. I can talk to you however I want. Now get out of this building or I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. For a moment she thought he might actually lunge at her. But the security guard stepped between them and Trevor seemed to remember where he was. He pointed at her, his hands shaking. You're going to regret this, he said. I promise you, Naomi, you're going to regret everything you've done. The only regret I have, she said coldly, is that I wasted 5 years of my life on you. Now leave before I add a restraining order violation to your list of problems. He left, finally storming out to his car and peeling out of the parking lot. Naomi stood there, her heart racing, her hands trembling slightly. Kennedy was kicking hard, disturbed by the stress. Are you okay? Jennifer asked, her hand on Naomi's shoulder. I'm fine. Just tired. Go home. Rest. We'll handle everything here. Naomi wanted to argue, but she knew Jennifer was right. The stress wasn't good for the baby. She drove home, took a long shower, and lay down in her bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying the scene, kept going over everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, assuming it was Trevor from another phone. But curiosity got the better of her. This is Bethany. I know you don't want to talk to me, but please. I need to tell you something important about Trevor. Something that affects you and your baby. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Main Street. 2 p.m. Please. Naomi stared at the message. Her first instinct was to delete it and block the number. She wanted nothing to do with Bethany. The woman had helped destroy her marriage. What could she possibly have to say that Naomi would want to hear? But the phrase affects you and your baby stuck with her. What if it was important? What if there was something about Trevor's health or his plans that she needed to know? She texted back, I'll think about it. Then she threw her phone across the room and buried her face in her pillow. Everything was so complicated. Why couldn't Trevor just sign the papers, accept his fate, and disappear from her life? Why did he have to keep fighting, keep making everything harder? Because he's a narcissist, she thought. Because he can't accept that he lost. Because he still thinks he can win somehow. Well, he was wrong. Naomi was going to make absolutely certain of that. She thought about Bethany's message. About the meeting request. And slowly, against her better judgment, she decided she would go. Not because she forgave Bethany or because she trusted her. But because knowledge was power, and if Bethany knew something about Trevor that could help Naomi's case, she'd be a fool not to listen. She'd meet with Bethany. She'd hear whatever secrets the mistress wanted to spill. And then she'd use that information to bury Trevor once and for all. Naomi sat in the corner of the coffee shop, her hand wrapped around a cup of herbal tea, watching the door. It was exactly 2 o'clock. She told herself 100 times that coming here was a mistake, that she should just walk out. But she stayed. Bethany arrived 3 minutes late. She looked different than she had at the baby shower. No more designer clothes and perfect hair. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had dark circles under her eyes and she looked thinner. Scared. She spotted Naomi and hurried over, sliding into the seat across from her. Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't, Naomi said coldly. You have 5 minutes. Talk. Bethany's hands shook as she wrapped them around her own coffee cup. I know you hate me. You have every right to. What I did was wrong. What we did was wrong. I told myself it was different, that it was real love, but I was lying to myself. I don't care about your guilt, Naomi interrupted. You said you had information. What is it? Bethany took a breath. Trevor lied to me. About everything. He told me he was rich, that he had investments, that he was going to leave you and we'd have this amazing life together. But it was all fake. Everything was bought with stolen money. The condo, the trips, the jewelry. When it all came out, I realized he'd been using me. That's not information, Naomi said. That's you feeling sorry for yourself. I don't care that he lied to you, Bethany. You helped him lie to me. I know. But there's more. Bethany leaned forward. After everything fell apart, Trevor changed. He got angry. Desperate. He's been calling me constantly, blaming me for everything. He says if I hadn't pushed him to leave you, none of this would have happened. He's been drinking. A lot. And he's been talking about doing something to get back at you. Naomi felt a chill. What do you mean, get back at me? I don't know exactly. But he's obsessed with the idea that you set him up, that you planned all of this. He keeps saying you're going to pay. He keeps saying he'll find a way to hurt you the way you hurt him. Bethany's voice dropped to a whisper. I think he might try to do something to damage your business. Or your reputation. He's been contacting your clients, trying to spread lies. I already know about that, Naomi said. Her business partners had warned her that Trevor had been calling clients, trying to turn them against the company. Most had hung up on him, but it was still a problem. There's something else, Bethany said. Something I found out by accident. Trevor has another woman. Naomi blinked. What? While he was with me, while we were supposedly in love and planning our future, he was also sleeping with someone else. One of his clients. I found messages on his phone. He's been seeing her for about 3 months. For a second, Naomi just stared. Then she started to laugh. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all was too much. Trevor had cheated on her with Bethany. Then he'd cheated on Bethany with someone else. He was a serial cheater, and somehow she'd been blind to it for years. I'm glad you think it's funny, Bethany said bitterly. It's not funny, Naomi said, still laughing. It's pathetic. He's pathetic. And so are we, forever believing in him. I know, Bethany whispered. I know I'm pathetic. I'm probably going to lose my job over this. I'm definitely losing the condo. My family won't talk to me. I destroyed my life for a man who was lying to me the whole time. Naomi's laughter died. She looked at Bethany and really saw, a woman who'd made terrible choices and was now paying for them. She couldn't find it in herself to feel sorry for Bethany. She'd been an active participant in the affair, but she could at least acknowledge that Trevor had used her too. Why are you telling me this? Naomi asked. Because you should know what you're dealing with. Trevor isn't just a cheater. He's dangerous. He's unpredictable. And he's getting more unstable by the day. I'm scared of what he might do. Have you told the police? And say what? My married boyfriend who I helped cheat might do something bad? They'd laugh at me. But you have lawyers and resources. You can protect yourself. Naomi stood up. Thank you for the information. I'll make sure my lawyer knows. But after this, I don't want to hear from you again. Don't text me. Don't call me. Stay away from me and my family. I will, Bethany said. I promise. I just wanted you to know. Naomi left the coffee shop and immediately called Patricia. We need to talk. Today if possible. An hour later, she was back in Patricia's office, recounting the conversation with Bethany. So he's harassing clients and has another woman on the side, Patricia said, taking notes. And he's made threats. That's good for us. Good? Good for our case. Every stupid thing he does makes our position stronger. The more unstable he looks, the easier it is to argue for full custody and maximum child support. We can also file for a more comprehensive restraining order if he's making threats. Do it, Naomi said. I don't trust him. Over the next 2 weeks, Trevor's life continued its downward spiral. Word got out about his affairs, plural, and his professional reputation was destroyed. Clients stopped returning his calls. The few who did made it clear they wanted nothing to do with him. He was toxic, a cautionary tale about mixing business with personal drama. His family, who'd always loved Naomi, cut him off completely. His mother called Naomi to apologize, crying over the phone about how she'd raised her son better than this. His sister sent a long email expressing her support for Naomi and her disgust with Trevor. Even his father, usually the type to stand by his son no matter what, told Trevor he was on his own. Without family support, without income, and with mounting legal bills, Trevor was forced to move out of his temporary apartment and into a cheap motel. The woman he'd been seeing, his latest affair, wanted nothing to do with him once she learned about his financial situation. Bethany had stopped taking his calls entirely. He was alone, broke, and getting more desperate by the day. Naomi heard about all of this through the grapevine. Their social circles overlapped enough that news traveled fast. Part of her felt satisfied. This was the revenge she'd wanted. Trevor was suffering the consequences of his actions. But another part of her was nervous. Desperate people did desperate things. She was right to be nervous. 3 weeks after the baby shower, Naomi came home from work to find her front door ajar. Her blood went cold. She'd locked it that morning. She was certain. She called the police immediately, waiting in her car until they arrived. 2 officers went through the house while she stood outside, her heart pounding, Kennedy kicking frantically inside her. "Ma'am?" One of the officers came back out. "Someone was definitely in your house. They went through your bedroom and your office. Did you notice anything missing?" She went inside carefully. Her jewelry box had been opened but nothing was gone. She'd moved all her valuable jewelry to a safe deposit box weeks ago. Her office was a mess, papers everywhere, her computer still on. "They were looking for something," she said. "Financial documents maybe. Or leverage of some kind." "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "My ex-husband," she said without hesitation. "Trevor Mitchell. We're going through a divorce. It's contentious." The officer wrote that down. "Does he have a key to the house?" "Not anymore. I changed the locks. But he knows where I hide the spare." She checked the fake rock by the front steps. "Empty." "He took it. We'll file a report. I'd recommend getting a security system installed. And probably filing for a restraining order if you haven't already." After the police left, Naomi called Patricia, then her mother, then her brother. Within an hour, her house was full of people. Her brother installed new locks immediately. Her mother packed her an overnight bag. Patricia was on the phone with the police, making sure they understood the severity of the situation. "You're not staying here tonight," her mother declared. "You're coming to my house." "Mom, I'm not going to be chased out of my own home. You're 7 months pregnant, and your ex-husband just broke into your house. You're coming to my house and that's final." Naomi wanted to argue but she was too tired. And scared. She'd underestimated Trevor's desperation. She'd thought his pride would keep him from doing something this stupid. But she'd been wrong. That night, lying in her childhood bedroom in her mother's house, Kennedy moving restlessly inside her, Naomi made a decision. She was done playing defense. Trevor wanted a war? She'd give him a war. But she'd make sure she won it so decisively that he'd never be able to come back at her again. She called Patricia. "Tomorrow, file criminal charges for the embezzlement. File for the restraining order. And let's move up the divorce hearing. I want this over. I want him legally removed from my life before this baby is born." "Consider it done," Patricia said. Trevor had made his last mistake. And Naomi was going to make him pay for every single one. The criminal charges against Trevor were filed on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the arrest warrant was issued. By Wednesday, Trevor was in custody facing charges of embezzlement, fraud, and breaking and entering. Naomi wasn't there when they arrested him. She didn't need to be. The satisfaction came from knowing that finally, there would be legal consequences for everything he'd done. Her lawyer called with the news. He made bail but just barely. He had to call in every favor he had left. And the judge was not sympathetic. The restraining order was approved too. "He can't come within 1,000 feet of you, your home, or your workplace." "Good," Naomi said. She was at her mother's house still, surrounded by boxes. She'd made a decision that had shocked everyone, including herself. She was leaving. Not just the house she'd shared with Trevor, but the city entirely. She'd gotten a job offer 2 weeks ago, one she'd applied for months back when she'd first started planning her exit strategy. A major consulting firm in Seattle wanted her to head their new branch. It was a promotion, a significant pay raise, and most importantly, it was 3,000 miles away from Trevor and the mess he'd made of their life. "You're really moving?" her sister asked, helping her pack. "All the way to Seattle?" "I need a fresh start," Naomi said, carefully wrapping a picture frame. It was a photo of her and her college friends before Trevor, before everything got complicated. "Every street in this city reminds me of him. The house, the office, even the grocery store. I can't heal if I'm constantly being reminded of what happened. But what about us? Your family? You can visit. Seattle is beautiful. You'll love it. And I need this. For me and for Kennedy. I need to build a life that's completely mine with no traces of Trevor anywhere." Her mother came in with more boxes. "I think you're making the right choice," she said quietly. "Sometimes you have to leave everything behind to truly start over." The move happened quickly. Naomi put the house on the market. She'd gotten full ownership in the divorce settlement that had been finalized just last week. Trevor had tried to fight it, but with the criminal charges hanging over his head, his lawyer had advised him to take whatever deal he could get. He'd lost everything. The house went to Naomi. The business was entirely hers now, and she'd sold her shares to the other partners for a substantial sum. The car, the boat, the savings, all hers. Trevor was left with his debts, his legal troubles, and nothing else. The restraining order meant he couldn't even say goodbye. Not that Naomi wanted him to. On her last day in the city, she stood in the empty house. All her belongings were already on a truck heading west. The furniture she'd left behind because she didn't want anything that reminded her of Trevor. She'd start completely fresh in Seattle. She put her hand on her belly. Kennedy was due in 6 weeks. She'd give birth in Seattle in a new hospital with new doctors surrounded by new beginnings. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her daughter. "Better than okay. We're going to be happy." Her phone buzzed. A text from Simone, who'd been crying all morning. "Have a safe trip. Call me when you get there. I love you." Naomi smiled, tears in her own eyes. She'd miss her friends and family desperately. But she could always visit. And they could visit her. This wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. She locked the door for the last time and got in her car. Her mother was driving with her, planning to stay for a few weeks to help her settle in. The rest of her family would come out after the baby was born. They drove out of the city as the sun was setting. Naomi didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, on the highway stretching ahead, on the future waiting for her. Seattle welcomed her with rain. It was mid-November, cold and wet, but Naomi loved it immediately. The city felt clean somehow. No. Full of possibilities. Her apartment was in a modern building downtown with views of the water and mountains. It was smaller than the house she'd left behind, but it was all hers. She'd decorated it carefully, choosing furniture and colors that made her happy. Soft blues and grays, plants in every window, a nursery painted in gentle cream with stars stenciled on the ceiling. The Seattle office welcomed her enthusiastically. Her reputation had preceded her. The woman who'd taken down her cheating husband and rebuilt her life. They saw her as strong, capable, exactly the kind of leader they wanted. And Naomi found she actually enjoyed the work. Without Trevor taking credit, without the constant stress of the divorce, she could focus on what she was good at. She implemented new strategies, brought in major clients, and built a team that respected her. Kennedy was born on December 15th, during a rare snowstorm. Naomi's mother was there, and her sister flew in just in time. The birth was long and difficult, but when they finally placed her daughter in her arms, Naomi cried with joy. Kennedy had her eyes. Dark and bright and beautiful. She had a head full of black curls and the tiniest fingers Naomi had ever seen. She was perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Hello, baby girl," Naomi whispered. "I'm your mama. And I promise you'll never see me with anyone who doesn't treat us both with complete respect. You're going to grow up strong and loved and happy." Kennedy yawned and snuggled into her mother's chest. The first few months were hard. Naomi was exhausted, overwhelmed, and often felt like she had no idea what she was doing. But she had her family who visited frequently. She had new friends from work who brought casseroles and offered to babysit. She had a support system that was real and genuine, not based on obligation or lies. And slowly she began to heal. The anger that had sustained her through the divorce started to fade. She stopped thinking about Trevor every day. Then every week. The wound he'd left began to scar over, still there but no longer bleeding. She focused on Kennedy. On her career. On building a life that was full and rich and meaningful. She went to mommy groups and made friends with other single mothers. She took Kennedy to the park on sunny days. She read her stories every night, the same ones her mother had read to her. And one day, about 8 months after moving to Seattle, Naomi realized she was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. Not the fake happiness she'd had with Trevor, where she'd convinced herself everything was fine. Real happiness. The kind that came from knowing exactly who you were and being completely okay with it. She was a mother. A business leader. A survivor. And she was doing just fine on her own. The conference was being held at a hotel on the waterfront. Naomi had been looking forward to it for weeks. It was a gathering of consulting professionals from across the country, a chance to network and learn new strategies. Kennedy was staying with Naomi's mother, who'd flown in for the week, and Naomi had actually slept a full 8 hours for the first time in months. She felt good. She'd lost the baby weight and then some, was wearing a new dress that made her feel confident and professional, and had prepared a presentation she was genuinely proud of. Life in Seattle had been good to her. More than good. It had transformed her. She was getting coffee in the hotel lobby when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Naomi?" "Naomi Richards." She turned around, confused for a moment. Richards was her maiden name, one she'd gone back to after the divorce. Then she saw who had spoken, and her face broke into a genuine smile. Darius? Oh my God. Darius Johnson had been her best friend in college. They'd met freshman year in an economics class and had been inseparable for 4 years. Study partners, confidants, the kind of friends who could talk for hours about nothing and everything. But after graduation he'd gotten a job opportunity in London and had moved abroad. They'd kept in touch for a while, but eventually, life had pulled them in different directions and they'd lost contact. Now here he was, looking older but still familiar, with the same warm smile and kind eyes she remembered. They hugged and it felt like coming home. What are you doing here? Naomi asked, still grinning. I thought you were in London. I was for almost 9 years. I moved back 6 months ago. Divorced, starting over, you know the story. He laughed, but there was sadness in it. What about you? Are you here for the conference? I am. I moved to Seattle last year. I'm heading the new branch for Whitman Consulting. Wow, that's impressive. Congratulations. He paused, studying her face. You look different. Good different. Happy. I am happy, she said and meant it. It's been a rough couple of years, but things are good now. They grabbed coffee together and found a quiet corner of the lobby to catch up. Darius told her about his divorce. His ex-wife had been having an affair with her boss, a familiar story that made Naomi's stomach twist in sympathy. They'd had no children, thankfully, but the betrayal had devastated him. So I came back to the States, he said. Started over. New job, new city. I'm working for Anderson Group now, actually. That's why I'm at the conference. I'm sorry about your marriage, Naomi said. I know how much that hurts. You say that like you've been through it too. So Naomi told him her story. Not all of it, they didn't have time for all of it, but the broad strokes. The affair. The baby shower. The divorce. The move to Seattle. And Kennedy. You have a daughter? Darius's face lit up. Naomi, that's amazing. What's her name? Kennedy. She's 10 months old now. The best thing that ever happened to me. I'd love to meet her sometime. You should come over for dinner, Naomi said impulsively. I mean, if you want to. No pressure. It would just be nice to catch up properly. I'd like that, Darius said. A lot. They exchanged numbers and Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not romance, not yet, but the potential for it. The feeling of connecting with someone who understood her, who had a similar history, who felt safe. Darius came over 3 days later. Naomi cooked dinner, pasta with homemade sauce, nothing fancy but made with care. Her mother had graciously offered to take Kennedy for a walk so they could talk without interruption. They sat on her couch, wine glasses in hand, and talked for hours. About their college days. About their failed marriages. About starting over in a new city. About dreams and disappointments and everything in between. Can I be honest with you? Darius said as the evening was winding down. When I saw you at the conference, my first thought was how beautiful you looked. My second thought was how much I'd missed you. Naomi felt her cheeks warm. I missed you too. It's been so good seeing you again. I don't want to complicate your life, he continued. You've been through enough. But I'd really like to spend more time with you. As friends, or potentially something more if you're ever ready for that. She looked at him, at his honest face and kind eyes, and she felt something unfurl in her chest. Not the desperate, anxious love she'd had with Trevor, but something quieter, steadier, more real. I'd like that too, she said. But slowly. I have Kennedy to think about, and I'm not ready to jump into anything serious. Slowly works for me, Darius said. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few months they did exactly that. They took it slow. Coffee dates that turned into dinner dates. Long phone calls after Kennedy went to bed. Walks around the city on sunny afternoons, with Kennedy in her stroller and Darius making the baby laugh with silly faces. He was patient. Kind. He never pushed for more than Naomi was ready to give. He respected her boundaries, her fears, her need to protect herself and her daughter. And gradually, Naomi found herself trusting him in a way she hadn't thought she'd be able to trust anyone again. I think I'm falling for him, she told her mother one evening. Is that crazy? After everything that happened with Trevor? It's not crazy, her mother said. It's healing. You're allowed to be happy, baby. You're allowed to love again. Just make sure it's the right kind of love this time. How do I know if it's right? Her mother smiled. Does he make you feel safe? Does he respect you? Does he treat Kennedy well? Does he add to your life or take from it? Naomi thought about it. Darius made her feel incredibly safe. He respected every decision she made. Kennedy adored him. And he definitely added to her life. He made her laugh, made her think, made her feel valued. Yes, she said. To all of those things. Then maybe it's right, her mother said. But only you can decide that. Naomi decided to trust her instincts. She'd been wrong about Trevor, yes, but she'd also been ignoring warning signs that were obvious in hindsight. With Darius there were no warning signs. Just green lights all the way. They became official 6 months after reconnecting. No big dramatic moment. They were having dinner at his apartment when he reached across the table and took her hand. I love you, he said simply. I've probably loved you since college if I'm being honest. But I definitely love you now. And I love Kennedy. I know we're taking this slow and that's fine. But I wanted you to know how I feel. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears. I love you too, she said. And that terrifies me, but I love you. I'm not Trevor, he said gently. I'm never going to hurt you the way he did. I promise you that. I know, she said. And she did know. Deep in her bones, she knew that Darius was different. Real. True. I trust you. It was the first time she'd said those words since the divorce. And she meant them completely. The final court date for Trevor's criminal trial was set for July, almost 2 years after the baby shower that had destroyed their marriage. Naomi wasn't required to testify. The evidence was so overwhelming that Trevor's lawyer had been trying to get him to take a plea deal, but she wanted to be there. She wanted to see justice served. She flew back to her old city for the hearing. Darius offered to come with her, but she needed to do this alone. It was her closure, her final chapter in the Trevor story. The courthouse was exactly as she remembered it from the divorce proceedings. Cold. Institutional. But today she felt no nervousness. Only determination. She sat in the gallery, Kennedy on her lap. Her daughter was 18 months old now, walking and talking in small sentences, the light of Naomi's life. She'd brought Kennedy specifically so Trevor would see exactly what he'd lost. When Trevor was brought in, Naomi barely recognized him. He'd aged 10 years in 2. His hair was graying, his face was gaunt, and he shuffled rather than walked. Prison had not been kind to him. He'd been unable to make bail after violating his restraining order a second time. He saw Naomi and Kennedy and something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Longing? Naomi didn't care which. She stared back at him, her face impassive until he looked away. The judge entered and the proceedings began. Trevor's lawyer made a half-hearted argument about leniency, about how Trevor had made mistakes but didn't deserve prison time. The prosecutor laid out the evidence. $500,000 in embezzlement, fraud, breaking and entering, stalking behavior that had violated restraining orders. Your Honor, the prosecutor concluded, Mr. Mitchell has shown no remorse for his actions. He has continued to harass the victim, to blame others for his choices, and to evade responsibility. He represents a danger to Ms. Richards and her child, and the state recommends the maximum sentence. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Trevor with clear disgust. Mr. Mitchell, she said, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of marital infidelity and financial fraud. But the cruelty you displayed, handing your pregnant wife divorce papers at her baby shower, stealing from your own business to fund your affair, stalking and harassing her after she'd moved on, that stands out even in my experience. Trevor opened his mouth to speak, but the judge held up her hand. You had every advantage in life. A successful business, a loving wife, a child on the way, and you threw it all away for selfish, short-term gratification. You then compounded your mistakes by breaking the law repeatedly, showing no respect for the court or for the woman you once claimed to love. She paused, looking down at her papers. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 8 years in state prison for embezzlement and fraud. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution to your former company in the amount of $500,000, plus damages. You will pay child support for your daughter until she turns 18, based on what your earning potential should have been had you not destroyed your own career. And you will be barred from contacting Ms. Richards or her daughter in any way for the rest of your life. Any violation will result in additional charges. 8 years. Naomi felt something release in her chest. It was over. Really truly over. Trevor would be in prison for almost a decade. Kennedy would be 10 years old before he got out. By then she wouldn't even remember him. Trevor was led away and he didn't look back. Naomi sat there for a moment, Kennedy babbling happily in her lap, and she felt tears on her cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of closure. It's over, baby, she whispered to Kennedy. It's all over. He can never hurt us again. Outside the courthouse, Patricia was waiting. She'd retired from active practice 6 months ago but had come back for this one final hearing. Well? Patricia asked. 8 years, Naomi said. And he has to pay everything back. Patricia smiled, fierce and proud. Good. That's exactly what he deserved. She pulled Naomi into a hug. You did it. You got your justice. We did it, Naomi corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have, Patricia said. But I'm glad I could help. You're one of the strongest women I've ever met, Naomi. Don't ever forget that. They had lunch together, celebrating the victory. Patricia told stories about other cases she'd handled, always finding creative ways to protect her clients. Naomi talked about her life in Seattle, about Darius, about Kennedy's latest antics. Are you happy? Patricia asked finally. I am, Naomi said without hesitation. Really genuinely happy. Trevor tried to destroy me but instead he freed me. I have a better life now than I ever did with him. That's the best revenge of all, Patricia said. Living well. After lunch, Naomi had one more stop to make. She drove to her old house, the one she'd sold immediately after moving. New people lived there now, a young family with 2 kids. She didn't go inside. She just parked across the street and looked at it. This was where she'd planned to raise her family. Where she dreamed of birthday parties and Christmas mornings and ordinary happiness. Trevor had poisoned those dreams, but he couldn't poison her future. She looked down at Kennedy, who was starting to fall asleep in her car seat. That was almost our home, she told her daughter. But we found a better one. We found Seattle and Darius and a life that's real. Aren't we lucky? Kennedy yawned and snuggled into her blanket. Naomi drove away from the house, from the courthouse, from the whole city. She drove to the airport and boarded a plane back to Seattle, back to her real life. Back to Darius, who was waiting at arrivals with flowers and a smile. Back to her apartment that felt like home. Back to the future she'd built from the ashes of her marriage. Trevor was in prison. Bethany had moved away, facing her own consequences. The past was buried and done. And Naomi? She was free. Finally, completely free. 1 year later, Naomi stood in her apartment, preparing for Kennedy's 2nd birthday party. The space was decorated with balloons and streamers, and a beautiful cake sat on the table. Chocolate with vanilla frosting, Kennedy's favorite. This party was different from the baby shower that had destroyed her life. There was no fear here. No hidden betrayals. Just genuine love and happiness. Friends from work arrived with gifts. Other mothers from Kennedy's playgroup brought their children. Darius helped set up games in the courtyard, making the kids laugh with his exaggerated enthusiasm. Her mother and sister had flown in, along with Simone, who'd been crying happy tears since she arrived. Look at this, Simone said, gesturing around the room. Look at what you built. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, Naomi said, hugging her best friend. You kept me sane through everything. You kept yourself sane, Simone corrected. I just reminded you how strong you were. Kennedy toddled over, demanding to be picked up. She was beautiful, with Naomi's eyes and a personality that was pure joy. She knew nothing about Trevor except that he was her daddy who lived far away. A simple explanation that satisfied her 2-year-old curiosity without burdening her with the full truth. Cake. Kennedy announced. Want cake, Mama? Soon, baby, Naomi laughed. Let's wait for everyone to get here first. The party was perfect. Kids ran around playing games. Adults chatted and laughed. Kennedy was showered with love and presents. When it came time to blow out the candles, Darius helped her, and the way he looked at both of them, with such genuine affection and care, made Naomi's heart swell. After the cake was cut and the guests were mingling, her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Thought you'd want to know. Trevor was denied early parole. He'll serve his full sentence. Naomi stared at the message for a moment. 2 years ago, news like this would have consumed her. She would have felt satisfaction or anger or something intense. Now, she felt nothing. Trevor was part of her past, a chapter that was closed. What happened to him didn't matter anymore. She texted back, "Thanks for letting me know. Hope you're doing well." Then she put her phone away and went back to the party. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Kennedy was asleep, Naomi and Darius sat on the balcony, watching the Seattle skyline light up. "I got a call today," Darius said. "From my lawyer." Naomi turned to look at him. "Everything okay?" "More than okay. My ex-wife wants to officially close everything. No more alimony negotiations, no more fighting. She's remarried and wants to move on. How do you feel about that? He thought for a moment. Relieved mostly. That chapter of my life is over. I can focus on this one. He took her hand. On us. Us, Naomi repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. I love you, he said. And I love Kennedy like she's my own. I know we've been taking this slow and I respect that. But I want you to know, I'm in this for the long haul. Whatever the future holds, I want to be part of it. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. I want that too. But I need to be honest with you about something. What? I'm scared, she admitted. I was so wrong about Trevor. I thought I knew him, thought our marriage was solid. And I was completely blind to who he really was. What if I'm wrong about this too? Darius pulled her close. You're not wrong. But even if you were, even if I somehow turned out to be different than you thought, you'd survive. You'd do what you did before, you'd stand up, dust yourself off and build something even better. That's who you are, Naomi. You're not defined by Trevor's betrayal. You're defined by how you rose above it. She kissed him soft and sweet. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I fell in love with an incredible woman who showed me what real strength looks like. They sat there together, watching the city, and Naomi thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the anger, the determination. The legal battles and the long nights. The moment she'd stood in that courtroom and watched Trevor be sentenced. The moment she'd realized she was truly free. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Naomi, it's Bethany. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm getting married. I met someone who treats me right. I'm happy now and I hope you can be happy for me. I'm sorry for everything I did. I hope you can forgive me someday. Naomi read the message twice. A year ago she would have been angry. Would have felt that old rage flare up. But now, she just felt tired of it all. She typed back, I'm glad you're happy. I forgive you not for your sake but for mine. I don't want to carry anger anymore. But please don't contact me again. I've moved on and I need to leave the past in the past. She sent the message and blocked the number. Everything okay? Darius asked. Everything's perfect, she said. And she meant it. That night, after Darius had gone home, Naomi stood in Kennedy's doorway, watching her daughter sleep. She thought about the baby shower 2 years ago. The moment Trevor had handed her those papers and tried to destroy her life. He'd thought he was crushing her. Taking everything from her. Instead, he'd freed her. She'd built a life he could never have given her. A life based on honesty and respect and real love. She had a career she was proud of, a daughter who was thriving, a man who treated her like a treasure, and most importantly, she had herself. Whole and healed and stronger than ever. Trevor was in prison, alone and broken. Bethany was starting over with someone new, carrying the guilt of what she'd done. And Naomi? She was here in Seattle, surrounded by people who loved her, living the life she'd always deserved. That was the best revenge of all. Not his suffering, though there was a certain justice in that. The best revenge was her happiness. Her success. Her ability to take the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transform it into the foundation for something beautiful. She kissed Kennedy's forehead softly. Sweet dreams, baby girl, she whispered. Tomorrow we're going to the park with Darius and we're going to have a wonderful day. Because that's what we do now. We have wonderful days. She closed the door gently and went to bed, a smile on her face and peace in her heart. Full circle. From the worst moment of her life to the best. And it was only going to get better from here. 2 years after Kennedy's second birthday party, Naomi stood in a different apartment, in a different season, living a different life. Not different in the sense of being separate from what came before, but evolved. Better. Complete. The apartment was bigger now, a 3-bedroom they'd moved into 6 months ago. The third bedroom was for Darius, who'd officially moved in after a long, careful conversation about what it meant for Kennedy for all of them. He had his own space, his own boundaries, but he was part of their family in every way that mattered. Kennedy was 4 years old now, bright and funny and full of questions. She called Darius D, and would often run to him when she got hurt or scared, trusting him completely. He'd never tried to replace Trevor. None of them wanted that, but he'd built his own relationship with Kennedy, one based on trust and genuine affection. Mama? Kennedy called from the living room. Dee says we can go to the aquarium today. Can we? Please? Naomi smiled, walking out to find Darius on the floor playing with Kennedy's toy animals. He looked up at her with that familiar grin that still made her heart skip a beat. I said we could go if your mama says yes, he clarified. Yes, we can go, Naomi said, and Kennedy cheered. But first, breakfast. While Kennedy ran to wash her hands, Darius stood and wrapped his arms around Naomi. Good morning, beautiful. Good morning yourself. She kissed him, soft and easy. 4 years together and she still got butterflies sometimes. But they were the good kind of butterflies. The kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Her career had exploded in the past few years. She was now the regional director for the entire West Coast, overseeing 5 offices and managing a team of 50 consultants. She'd been featured in business magazines, asked to speak at conferences, and had even been approached about writing a book about building businesses after personal crisis. But more importantly, she loved what she did. She mentored young professionals, especially women who'd been through difficult divorces or personal setbacks. She showed them that failure wasn't final, that you could rebuild, that you could be stronger on the other side. The aquarium trip was perfect. Kennedy pressed her face against the glass, delighted by the fish. Darius took a million photos. They had lunch at the cafe and Kennedy proudly told the waitress that she was there with my mama and my D. She's lucky to have both of you, the waitress said warmly. We're lucky to have her, Naomi replied, meaning it completely. That evening, after Kennedy was in bed, Naomi and Darius opened a bottle of wine and sat on their balcony, a ritual they developed over the years. This was their time to talk, to connect, to be just them. I got a letter today, Naomi said. From Trevor's lawyer. Darius tensed slightly. What did it say? Trevor is being released in 2 months. Early release for good behavior. He wants to establish visitation rights with Kennedy. The words hung in the air between them. Trevor had been sentenced to 8 years but was getting out after 6. It wasn't unexpected. Prison overcrowding meant early releases were common, but the timing still felt like a punch to the gut. What are you going to do? Darius asked carefully. Fight it, Naomi said without hesitation. Kennedy doesn't know him. She doesn't remember him. He's been gone her entire conscious life. I'm not going to traumatize her by forcing her to spend time with a stranger just because he contributed DNA. The courts might not see it that way. Then I'll get the best lawyer I can find, Naomi said firmly. Patricia might be retired, but she knows people. Trevor gave up his right to be Kennedy's father when he handed me divorce papers at my baby shower. He made his choice. Now he has to live with it. Darius was quiet for a moment. You know I support whatever you decide. But I have to ask, is this about protecting Kennedy, or about still being angry at Trevor? Naomi considered the question. 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, she would have bristled at it. But she'd done enough therapy, enough self-reflection to answer honestly. Both, she admitted. I am protecting Kennedy. She's happy and stable and secure. Bringing Trevor into her life would disrupt that. But yes, part of me is still angry at him. Not the way I used to be, not that burning rage. But I'm angry that he thinks he can walk back into our lives after everything he did. I'm angry that the law gives him rights when he hasn't earned them. That's fair, Darius said. He took her hand. Whatever you need from me, I'm here. If you need someone to come to court with you or to take care of Kennedy during meetings, or just to hold you while you cry or rage or whatever you need to do, I'm here. I know, she said softly. And that's why I love you. The custody battle that followed was brutal but expected. Trevor's lawyer argued that he'd paid his debt to society and deserved a relationship with his daughter. Naomi's lawyer, a fierce woman named Rachel who Patricia had personally recommended, argued that Trevor had shown no interest in Kennedy for 4 years, had never sent birthday cards or gifts, had made no effort to be part of her life even from prison. Fatherhood isn't about biology, Rachel argued in court. It's about showing up. Mr. Mitchell hasn't shown up for Kennedy's entire life. He doesn't get to decide he's ready to be a father now that it's convenient for him. The judge was the same woman who'd sentenced Trevor. She looked at him with the same disgust she'd shown 4 years earlier. Mr. Mitchell, she said, you had a chance to be a father. You threw that away when you chose to cheat on your wife, steal from your company, and hand your pregnant wife divorce papers in the most cruel manner possible. You have served your time for your crimes, yes. But that doesn't erase what you did. That doesn't automatically make you a father. She paused, looking at Kennedy's file. However, the law gives you certain rights. Therefore, I'm ordering supervised visitation once a month for 2 hours in a neutral location. Ms. Richards will have full custody. You will continue paying child support. And if you miss even one scheduled visit, or if there's any evidence that these visits are harmful to Kennedy, your rights will be terminated permanently. Do you understand? Trevor nodded, looking defeated. It was a victory for Naomi, though not a complete one. Once a month was better than shared custody. Supervised visits were better than unsupervised. But it still meant Trevor would be in their lives. The first visit was scheduled for the following month. Naomi prepared Kennedy carefully. "You're going to meet someone," she told her daughter. "His name is Trevor, and he's your biological father. That means he helped make you, but he hasn't been around. I need you to understand that you don't have to call him daddy if you don't want to. You don't have to hug him if you don't want to. You just have to be polite, okay?" Kennedy, wise beyond her 4 years, nodded seriously. "Is he a bad man?" "He made bad choices," Naomi said carefully. "But everyone deserves a chance to do better. We'll see if he takes it." The visit took place at a family center with a supervisor present. Naomi waited in the car while Darius took Kennedy inside. She couldn't bear to see Trevor, and the court had agreed that it wasn't necessary. 2 hours later, Darius came back with Kennedy. She was quiet, clutching her stuffed elephant. "How was it?" Naomi asked gently. "He was okay," Kennedy said. "But he's not my D. D is better." Naomi looked at Darius, who shrugged. She's not wrong. The visits continued monthly, but Kennedy never warmed to Trevor. He tried, bringing gifts, asking about school, attempting to build a relationship. But you couldn't buy back 4 years of absence. You couldn't erase the past. After 6 months, Trevor's lawyer filed papers to stop the visits. He claimed they were too painful, that Kennedy clearly didn't want a relationship with him. Naomi agreed to let him sign away his parental rights permanently. He would no longer have to pay child support, and he would no longer have any claim to Kennedy. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked. "The child support is significant." "I don't need his money," Naomi said. "I need him gone. Permanently. I need to know he can never come back and disrupt our lives again." The papers were signed. Trevor disappeared from their lives as completely as if he'd never existed. And life went on. Beautiful, normal, happy life. Kennedy started kindergarten and loved it. She made friends, learned to read, brought home artwork to hang on the refrigerator. Darius went to every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game. To Kennedy's friends, he was her dad. The technicalities didn't matter. Naomi continued to thrive professionally. Her book was published to critical acclaim. She was invited to speak at major conferences. She built a life she was proud of, one that was entirely her own creation. And one evening in the fall, 5 years after the baby shower that had destroyed her marriage and freed her life, Darius came home from work with an unusual expression on his face. "What's wrong?" Naomi asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong," he said. He pulled a small box from his pocket and got down on one knee. "I've been thinking about this for a while. And I know we've both been through terrible marriages. I know we both have scars. But I love you, Naomi. I love Kennedy. I want to make this official. Will you marry me?" Naomi stared at the ring, at Darius's hopeful face, and felt her heart overflow. This was what real love looked like. Patient. Steady. Earned over time through consistent actions, not just pretty words. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Kennedy came running out of her room, having heard the commotion. "What's happening?" "Dee asked me to marry him," Naomi said, laughing through her tears. "Does that mean he'll be my real dad?" Kennedy asked. "If you want me to be," Darius said, looking at her seriously. "I'd be honored." Kennedy threw her arms around him. "Yes, you're already my real dad. Now it'll just be official." They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the beach. Kennedy was the flower girl, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself. Naomi's family was there, and Darius's family, and all the friends who'd supported them through everything. Even Patricia came, proud as a mother at her daughter's wedding. There was no drama. No last-minute revelations. No betrayals. Just love and joy and the promise of a future built on trust. As Naomi stood at the altar, looking at Darius holding Kennedy's hand, she thought back to that terrible day 5 years ago. The baby shower. The divorce papers. The humiliation. Trevor's smug face as he tried to destroy her. He'd wanted to break her. Instead, he'd freed her. Because that moment, as awful as it was, had been the catalyst for everything good in her life now. It had forced her to find her strength. To build a business entirely on her own merit. To create a life based on her values, not someone else's lies. To find real love with someone who saw her worth and treated her accordingly. Trevor was somewhere out there, probably still making excuses for his choices. Bethany was living her own life, carrying her own consequences. And Naomi? She was here on a beach in Seattle, marrying the love of her life, raising a beautiful daughter, living a life that exceeded every dream she'd ever had. That was her revenge. Not his suffering, though there was justice in that. Her revenge was her happiness. Complete, genuine, hard-won happiness. I love you, she whispered to Darius as they said their vows. I love you too, he replied. Forever. Kennedy squeezed both their hands. We're a real family now, she announced proudly. We were always a real family, Naomi said. But now we're making it official. The reception was perfect. Dancing and laughter and joy. Her mother gave a speech that made everyone cry. Her sister told embarrassing stories from their childhood. Kennedy danced with Darius, standing on his feet. As the night wound down, Naomi stood on the beach, looking out at the water, and felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Simone. You did it, Simone said softly. You survived. You thrived. You won. We all won, Naomi corrected. Everyone who stood by me. Everyone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. But mostly you, Simone insisted. You're the strongest person I know. Naomi thought about that. Was she strong? Or had she just refused to be weak? Maybe it was the same thing. She looked back at the reception, at Darius dancing with Kennedy, at her family laughing together, at the life she'd built from the ashes of her first marriage. You know what the funny thing is? She said. I'm actually grateful to Trevor now. Simone looked shocked. Grateful? After everything he did? Not grateful for the pain. Never that. But grateful for the clarity. He showed me who he really was. He forced me to find my strength. He gave me the opportunity to build the life I actually wanted, not the life I thought I was supposed to have. In a twisted way, handing me those divorce papers was the best thing he ever did for me. That's a very healthy perspective, Simone said, laughing. I've had 5 years and a lot of therapy, Naomi replied with a grin. Darius came over, Kennedy asleep on his shoulder. Ready to go, Mrs. Johnson? Mrs. Johnson. A new name for a new life. Naomi smiled and took his free hand. Ready, she said. They drove home through the Seattle night, Kennedy snoring softly in the back seat, the city lights twinkling around them. Tomorrow they'd start their honeymoon, a week in Hawaii while Naomi's mother watched Kennedy. But tonight, they'd go home to their apartment, to their life, to their future. Naomi thought about Trevor one last time. About the man who'd tried to destroy her and had created her instead. She hoped he'd found peace. She hoped he'd learned from his mistakes. But mostly, she hoped he'd fade from her memory entirely, becoming nothing more than a footnote in the story of her incredible life. Because that's all he was now. A footnote. A bad chapter in a book that got so much better. She was Naomi Johnson now. Mother, wife, business leader, survivor, thriver. She'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transformed it into rocket fuel for an amazing life. That was the real story. Not his betrayal. Her triumph. And she'd lived happily ever after, not because she found a prince, but because she'd saved herself.